Pardon me?
Hello, right, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for coming along to the webinar this afternoon, and I'm really honoured to have Bob Burg here with me this afternoon, because Bob is somebody that absolutely knows how to do business, and if you've followed Bob at all on social media you will see that he's absolutely got it nailed on, and he's somebody that I wouldn't say I've tried to emulate, but Bob's principles are exactly the way that I run my own business and I run my own social media profiles. And so we're really lucky this afternoon to have Bob here, because he's going to teach us exactly how he's going to teach us the principles that he abides by that are going to help you to be more successful in your own business. So I'm going to hand over to Bob. Bob is the co-author of 3 books about go-givers, and it's go-givers that sell more that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So, Bob, can you just give us a bit of a background into what go-givers sell more covers for those people who haven't read your books yet? And in a minute we'll go through all the 5 laws individually.
Sure. Well, Go-Giver Sell More is just the follow-up book to the Go-Giver that John David Mann and I wrote several years ago. The Go-Giver is what's called a business parable or a business fable, which is it's a fictional story that teaches a lesson. It's about a guy named Joe who's sort of a young, up-and-coming, a good guy, but very frustrated just because he has some basic fundamentals incorrect in the way he's trying to do business. He has a huge focus on himself and what he can get for himself, rather than focusing on providing value to others, understanding that to the degree that you can focus on providing value to other people, that's the degree that you're going to yourself be successful. And so the Go-Giver is a parable with 5 laws that, as you said, we can discuss on this call. And then Go-Giver Sell More just sort of takes a practical look and shows how we apply the 5 laws in actual business situations.
And you know, for you guys that are listening, I think that's, I'm sure, you know, if you've followed me or been on any of my training before, you will know that, just as Bob is saying, there's a lot of people who focus entirely on what they want and what they can get from people. And being a go-giver is not anything about, it's about adding, well, we'll tell you what it's exactly about, but it's about being more, it's about being everybody else. It's about everybody else and not about you. And as a go-giver, you give, not because you want to receive, but you give because that's the way that you live your life. But by being a giver, it's not only a better way of living life, it's a better way of running business. So I want you to all, as you listen to what Bob says about all the different individual laws, think about how you can apply this to not only to your business, but to your life and the way that you use social media. Think about how when you interact with people on social media, you can apply what Bob's going to teach you. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about why I see Bob as successful as he is, what the things that I've picked up that you can also emulate and learn from Bob. So there are 5 laws of stratospheric success. There are the 5 different laws, and we're going to cover each of them in more detail. Now, the first one is the law of value. It is about creating and adding value to everyone around you. So, Bob, can you give us your tell the listeners on this webinar why it is so important to add value and how they can add value?
Sure, and you know, and Veronica, you really do. You know, you're the embodiment of these laws, because I see you doing such a great job of it on social media, and I know there's a lot of people who emulate you, and they should, because you really do a fantastic job. The law of value, and we define this in the original book, The Go-Giver. The law of value simply says that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. But this is something that's easy to confuse until you look a little deeper into it. Because when we say your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. That's a little counterintuitive, because we might ask the question, well, how could that possibly be? How do you give more in value than you take in payment and stay in business? I mean, it sounds like one of those things that's, nice to say, but really wouldn't work in the real world. So what we need to understand about this, and this is so very important, is the difference between price and value. There's a big difference between price and value. Price is a dollar amount. It's a dollar figure. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, opportunity, that brings with it so much worth, so much value, that someone will exchange their money for it in order to buy and benefit from this value you are providing, while at the same time, and this is very important, Veronica, you make a very, very healthy profit from it. So how would that work? Let's give an example. Let's say you decide to hire an accountant to do your taxes. And this accountant charges you, and I apologize because I always use the example, $1,000, so let's say £1,000, if that's okay, and charges you £1,000 to do your taxes, and that's the price, okay? That's their fee or their price. But what's the value they're providing to you? Well, the value is, let's say they save you £5,000 in taxes. Let's say they save you 25 hours of work that you would have to do yourself, which would keep you from doing other things. And let's say they do such a great job and in such a great way that they provide you with the security and peace of mind of knowing that it's done correctly. So while this accountant charged you £1,000, he actually gave you well over £5,000 in value, concrete value, the £5,000, but also the peace of mind and security. That's intangible, and that's priceless. That's probably worth more than the money that he saved you. So here's what he did, and this is key. He gave you more in value than what he took in payment. So you feel great about it, and at the same time, he made a very, very good profit, which he should, for the value he provided. And this is the kind of relationship we want to have with anyone with whom we do business. We give them so much more in value than what we take in payment that they feel terrific about doing business with us. And of course, we make a very healthy profit. Now, the question is, what's the best approach to doing this? And this picks up on what you said earlier. It's shifting your focus from yourself to the other person. You see, money is basically an echo of value. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the value comes first, and the money is a direct and very natural consequence or effect of the value that's been provided. So when you can shift your focus to pleasing this person, to making this person's life better, in whatever way that they would find value through your product or service, in this case with an accountant, well, that's kind of easy. Save them as much money as possible, make the effort, make it painless, and provide them with the good security and peace of mind. But but basically, so that's how it works. And so, to the degree that you can focus on this person, now if they understand though, if they feel that you're focused on the money instead of providing value to them, they're not going to be as excited about doing business with you. When they can tell your focus is on providing value to them, that's when they're most likely to exchange their money for the value you provide. And both parties not only come out a winner, but each person comes out much better off than they were before. In fact, as a final point, in a free enterprise-based economy, the entire purpose of an exchange like this is for both people to come away from that exchange much better off than they were before.
And when we talk about value, we're not talking about where you pick a figure out of the air and say this is worth this value, and then you pay like 1/5 of it in price. What we're talking about is an emotional value, isn't it, Bob? It's about letting
Yeah,
people.
it's both because like let's take the example of the accountant. He charged $1,000, and that was the price, not the value. The price was $1,000,
Yeah.
but in value, he gave a lot more than that because tangibly, if he saves a person $5,000 in taxes, that's $5,000 in value. But he also, gave the person a great buying experience. He treated them right. He provided them with security and peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. It's just like you go to a restaurant to eat, and maybe the price of the meal is 100 pounds or 75 pounds or whatever. But if you come away from that meal feeling great, not only were you well fed, but you were treated nicely, the ambiance and the atmosphere gave you a great feeling, you had a fun time and fun conversation with the person you were with, everybody you just felt great about it. If you felt as though your experience was worth a lot more than the 75 pounds or 100 pounds you paid, then obviously it was well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads nicely on to the second law, which is the law of compensation and touching people's lives. Because when you add value to somebody, when you add value to the lives around you, that's exactly what you do. And in fact, I don't know if they're meant to, but they do all link together, don't they? They lead to the next one.
Oh, absolutely. Each one builds upon the first.
So, how can we as business owners use the second law to touch people's lives?
Sure. The law of compensation simply says that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says to provide more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives we touch with the exceptional value we provide, the more money with which we'll be rewarded. So again, let's go back to our accountant in the first example. He did a great job of giving more in value than he took in payment. So if you were his client, you probably feel great about him. You would do business with him again, and you would refer him to other people. And his other clients probably feel very similar about him as you do. So our accountant is very quickly amassing what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors. And as he continues to add that kind of exceptional value to the lives of more and more people, in other words, he touches the lives of more and more people, he'll continue to be more and more profitable. And that's really what it's about in every person's business, really, regardless of what they do, Veronica, because building, creating value and providing exceptional value to people, that's the foundational principle, but you've got to touch the lives of more than that one person in order to bring in a healthy income. So what the law of compensation says is, yes, value is great. We need to do that, and we need to touch the lives of a lot of people with that value. So we could say that exceptional value plus significant reach equals very high financial compensation.
And when you mastered the first two, you were well on the way to building quality relationship. And
yes,
at the end, I will go back and I'll talk about how all of this applies directly to social media. But what Bob is very good at, and what I think I'm very good at, is building those solid networks of people. When I was organising this webinar, Bob, one of the things that nearly everybody said to me was, "Isn't Bob lovely?" And I'll explain why. The reason why people think you're lovely and the reason why people go away with a positive impression of me from social media is exactly because of these 5 laws. Because it is all about it's adding value, it's about touching people, and then that leads into building networks. Then, you know, Bob is the Bob that you see on social media is the Bob that you're hearing today. And, you know, you stay open to receiving, which we'll come to the other 2 in a minute. But it is all about having, if you want to make more sales from anywhere as well as social media, it's all about making sure that you've got these 5 laws covered. But you're doing it not because you're playing a game. That's the important thing. I don't want anyone to leave this webinar thinking, well, I'm not anything like that in real life, so I can play this game in order to make it work, because it doesn't work. It's real. You've got to be real, and you've got to work. You know, use these laws because you want to, because that is how you are, not because you're forcing yourself to take a move in a chess game, because that isn't how it works. So once you've added the value and you touch people's lives and they're now really receptive towards you, you'll start building the network. So, Bob, how does the 3rd law, how can we apply the 3rd law?
Sure, and I just want to say I agree with you totally. And first of all, you know, Veronica, just from when I first started to connect with you on social media, on Twitter mostly, it's so obvious. It was so obvious to me that you do apply these 5 laws. And, you know, these 5 laws really are nothing new. I mean, they're nothing that John and I made up. We just put them in sort of a story form in the book, The Go-Giver, and then in Go-Givers Sell More did a little bit of an explanation. But we didn't make any of these up. These have been around for a long time. And I think most of the people who really enjoy the book or the writings or what have you have already been doing these things. It's not something they had to learn. And someone like you, you know, you've been living your life and conducting your business through these 5 laws, which is why they resonated with you. And we were really happy when the book first came out, you know, to hear from leaders in business and in industry who said, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell people. But you know how it is sometimes, Veronica, where sometimes, you know, when people know you too well, as much as they respect you, they may not always listen to you sometimes. You know, and so sometimes, you know, when an outside person writes the book, then it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But meanwhile, it was the same thing, you know, that they've been told for years by someone. So I think that's, you know, in many ways what happened. So it wasn't that it was anything new, and so a lot of people will have John or myself on to interview, and we know we're teaching the same thing that, you know, you've been teaching for years, the same thing that many leaders have been teaching for years, and it's just kind of part of, you know, I think what life is, in a sense. It's hearing things from different people in different ways, but the principles are the same. You know, the success principles stay the same, and I love what you said about, you know, it's not some game. It's simply an extension of how a person lives their life. And so these laws can be utilized by someone who's introverted, someone who's extroverted, someone who, you know, is, it doesn't matter. They're just basic principles that people can use and utilize as according to their own nature. In fact, we'll talk about that more in the next law, the law of authenticity. But you just asked about the law of influence, and this, to me, is maybe one of my favorites. The law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, here's the thing about this. This is another one of those sort of tricky things when you say place other people's interests first. Please understand, and I know you understand this, Veronica, but for anyone listening, please understand. When we say put other people's interests first, we don't mean that in such a way that you should be anybody's doormat, you know, that you should be self-sacrificial or that you should be a martyr or do something that hurts yourself. That's not at all what we're saying. Let's put it this way. In the story, in the Go-Giver, Ernesto and then Sam share with Joe, the young protege, what they call the golden rule of business, of sales, of networking, what have you. And that is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no more powerful, there's no faster, there's no more effective way of eliciting those feelings toward you and others than by shifting your focus, by taking your focus off yourself and asking yourself, how can I put this other person's interest first? How can I add value to their life? How can I make their life better, easier, richer, more successful? In a sense, and there's a gentleman in the UK. His name is Thomas Power. He is the founder of E-Academy and wrote a great book, Networking for Life. And I love what he says about this. And he said this before the book came out. This is something that I just really just admired what he said. He said the energy comes from the willing suspension of self-interest. Now, understand, he wasn't saying the foregoing of self-interest, but the suspension of self-interest in order to just authentically and genuinely put other people's interests first, to go from being what I call I-focused or me-focused to being other-focused. And when you can do that, what happens is you plant these seeds of goodwill with people, of great will with people, where people feel good about you because they know you have their interests in mind and at heart. And these people they know you, they feel good about you, they like you, and they trust you. And you start developing these personal walking ambassadors, and you become that person who others see as a resource, as a trusted advisor, as somebody who they feel good about and could do business with you directly or refer business to you. And these people, and this kind of goes with what you were saying earlier, these people understand that these relationships are not 50-50, but simply 100. With everybody focused on providing value to those other people in their network, understanding that when you give this kind of value, but you do it without what I call an emotional attachment to having having them do for you. In other words, you know that as you plant these seeds of great will and develop these great relationships and people know, like, and trust you, you know they've got your best interest at heart as well. You know that a lot of them will do business with you, will refer you to others, but you don't do it for that reason. You provide value because you love to provide value to good people.
Absolutely.
And as you do it, it's very natural. So that's sort of that paradox that people have to get past, where it's what they call the either or. Well, are you giving to give or giving to receive? Well, no, you're giving to give, but you know as you do it, you are going to receive. And it's not like it's some far-out esoteric theory. It works for very practical reasons. You're developing great relationships, and people do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust.
I'm nodding my head so hard here it's going to fall off in a minute, but absolutely, we're absolutely on exactly the same page. And for you guys that are listening, if you've ever heard me speak, you'll know that this is exactly what I advocate for social media, because Bob is absolutely right. It is exactly, what Bob said is absolutely right. I can't really elaborate on that anymore. For the law of authenticity, be real. And as Bob said in the law of influence, it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or whether you think you're a people person. It's about being who you are everywhere, isn't it?
It really is, and it's interesting in the story. Well, first of all, the law of authenticity says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself.
Yeah.
So, and you'll recall in the story, one of the characters, Deborah, she learned a very, very important lesson, Veronica, and that was all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are, of course, very important, they're all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. When you, as I call it, you show up as yourself, day after day, after week, after month, people feel good. They trust you. They know they're getting the real package. They're getting the real you.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when someone kind of isn't really themselves, but they're sort of a phony baloney sort of, people can read that as well. And obviously people don't feel as secure with that person. They don't feel as safe with that person. They don't trust that person. And I think what happens is when people don't show up as themselves, Veronica, I don't think with most people that they mean to do that. I think it's they may not have a true idea of the actual value, the natural value that they provide others. There's really two types of value. There's intrinsic value that we all have just from being born, just from being here. We have a certain, value. But there's also market value. And what I mean by that is we each bring a certain, what my friend Mike Littman calls, an asset of value to the table. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And it's best, of course, while we want to shore up our weaknesses, we want to focus on our strengths, because by focusing on our strengths, we can use those to add value to other people. Some people might be good with numbers. Some people might be good at introducing people to each other. They might be good connectors. Other people might be great resources for people. There's different, and sometimes it's difficult for us to know our own value and our own assets of value because we're too close to the situation. We're too emotionally involved, which is why a social media coach like yourself can help someone understand how they can best communicate their value to others. But really, it's simply a matter of finding, of tapping. In other words, people sometimes say, well, Bob, how do I learn to become more authentic? And the answer is authenticity isn't something you need to learn. It's only something you need to embrace. Because at your core, you already are your true authentic person. Now, if I may add something here, authenticity should never be used as an excuse to improve ourselves. In other words, and I use the example of the guy who was sort of an angry guy, and he said, well, I'm an angry person, and I have an anger problem, and I yell at people, and if I was to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic. Well, that's baloney. That's wrong. What it means is this person has an authentic problem that he needs to authentically work on and become a more effective, authentic person. See, authenticity doesn't mean we don't try to learn more and grow. It means we continually work on stepping into our truer and higher authentic nature. The sages said, who is wise? And they answered, that person who learns from all others. And I think that's so key because there's so many great people we can learn from. And now here's the thing. See, we can learn from all others. We want to adapt their wisdom, but we want to be careful not to try to adopt their personality. See, I can learn from Thomas Power. I can learn from Veronica Pullen. I can learn from Ivan Meisner, but I can't be Thomas. I can't be Veronica. I can't be Ivan. I can only be the best Bob that I can be. So, my suggestion is tap into their wisdom, but don't try to be them. Adapt, don't adopt.
Absolutely. And when we come to the law of receptivity, now this law is about the first four are about giving value, giving of ourselves, giving reality, just giving. But the law of receptivity is being open. You stay open to receiving yourself, because if you can give and give and give and give and give, but we do. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to give back to you, you've got to be open to receiving in return, but without expectation. So, Bob, can you explain how they can remain open to receptivity, how they can stay open to receiving?
Absolutely. Very, very important. The law of receptivity, Veronica says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. You might remember at the end of the book, near the end of the original book, The Go-Giver, Pindar, the main mentor, asked Joe, the protege, to breathe out and hold that breath, keep breathing out, to the count of 30. Well, Joe tried, but he couldn't do it. I mean, it's very difficult. After about 10 seconds, he started to gasp for air. And Pindar said, "What's the matter? Joe can't do it." And Joe said, "Well, no, I can't just breathe out. I've got to breathe in as well." And Pindar jokingly said, "Well, Joe, what if I was to tell you that it's been medically proven that it's actually healthier to breathe out than it is to breathe in?" And Joe laughed. He said, "That's silly. You've got to do both. You've got to breathe out and breathe in."
Yeah.
And Pindar said, "Exactly. That's exactly right. You've got to do both. You breathe out, you breathe in. As human beings, we breathe out carbon dioxide and we breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving. We breathe in, which is receiving." And as you alluded to a few moments ago, giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. You can give and give value and give value and give value, but if you're not willing and open to making yourself available to receive in like measure, it's really all for nothing, because you're going to cut down the flow. You're going to stop the flow of abundance. All giving is made possible only because it's also a receiving. All receiving is made possible only because it's also a giving.
Bob, can you remember always using these principles in your life, or was it a shift that you went through at some point later? I mean, were you as a child, were you a go-giver?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I went through sort of a gradual shift. My parents were both people I would definitely describe as go-givers. So, we didn't have that name for it, but that's what they always did. They always created value. They touched people's lives. My dad was always a great networker just because people loved him and he loved people, to this day. They're two of the most authentic people I know. And they both came from, from very poor backgrounds and were entrepreneurs and built a nice business together that touched a lot of people's lives. So I grew up seeing it. I think I had to kind of go through my different phases back and forth before I really understood it and was able to put it together. But I think because of my upbringing and having that example, it was sort of a touchstone for me that I could always come back to. And once I really, really got it in my heart as to that's what it was really all about, that's when I sort of, took off with it.
So if there are people listening to this webinar who think, and I don't think there are, looking at who we've got a lovely set of people here today, but if there are people listening to this webinar who think that this really isn't me, I need to go through a gradual shift in order to become not a better person, because that's not the right word, but in order to become, to start applying these principles more to my life, where's the best place? Where would you recommend they started?
Well, one thing is, if you recall, in the original book, Joe's, the one condition of mentorship Joe had was that he had to apply each law that very night. And it wasn't that he had to try it, because trying it isn't the same as doing it. And it wasn't that he had to consider whether it would work, because considering whether it would work is not the same as doing it. He had to find a way to apply each law to the best of his ability that very night. And we found that a lot of people have emailed us to let us know that that's what they did. It wasn't maybe that night, but it was like one a week or one a night or a couple, whenever they read, to whatever speed they read the book. And it's a short book, so it's easy to read quickly. But here's the big thing, because what you asked was a great question. And my response is always this. First, you've got to believe that this is an effective way of doing things. Somebody might say, well, okay, what I've been doing so far hasn't really worked to the degree that I have wanted, my business to go or my life to go or what have you. So, they read a book like The Go-Giver, And the first thing they have to do is say, okay, do I believe this is the way to do it? Because let's face it, if they look at this and say, nah, this isn't right, they're not going to do it. And I wouldn't blame them. I mean, so the first thing is to, kind of ask yourself, does this work? And, well, the fact is it does, not because John and I made anything up. We didn't. This is from not only living our lives like this, but studying the companies and the people and the leaders and the producers who did it. These 5 laws, if someone will use all 5 of them in conjunction, absolutely works. So the first thing is for someone to believe that it works. Then the second thing is, okay, if I don't feel like this is really me, what's the best way to go about it? Well, aside from just making a decision to apply the laws, is apply the laws even if right now you don't feel authentic doing it. Now, here's what I mean by this. We mistakenly think that we have to feel a certain way before we act on it. Do you know that not only is that not true, it's actually the opposite? We act our way into feeling something. So in other words, if you don't feel as though you're, let's say you don't feel happy, okay? And so you're not smiling. And somebody might say, well, I have to feel happy before I can smile. Well, if you wait for that to happen, it may not happen. So what you want to do is smile. Put a big, huge, from the inside out smile on your face. And it actually changes your physiology. It changes the chemicals in your brain. It has effect in the endorphins, and they go through you. In fact, I'll say to somebody, just try and smile real big and not feel happy. You can't do it. And so what you do is you act your way into feeling. If somebody says, well, I'm feeling lazy and lethargic, then you know what? Don't wait until you feel energetic to act energetic. Stand up straight. Walk fast. Walk tall. Go walk with purpose. And you know what, Veronica? You're going to all of a sudden feel energetic, and you're going to feel purpose. It's like the person who says, well, I want to lose weight. I want to lose 20 pounds. We'd say 20 pounds in the States. What would you say? Like 20 kilos or?
I don't know.
So let's say 20 pounds of weight that we'd say in the States. I want to lose 20 pounds. So what we would suggest is, don't wait until you lose 20 pounds to start exercising and start eating better, right? Start exercising and eating better, and you'll lose the 20 pounds. So act our way into feeling. So even if you don't feel like you want to put other people's interests first, right? Do it anyway. Do it anyway, because here's what's going to happen. First of all, you're going to see how good it feels. Secondly, you're going to see how people respond to you better. Third, you're going to see how it helps you both in business and personally. And even if at first it's something you're acting your way into, don't worry about it. You're doing it in order to step into your truer, higher, authentic self.
Absolutely. And, guys, one of the things that I invite you to do after this call is to go and track, in brackets, stalk Bob on social media, because and when you look at his Twitter profile, which is at Bob Burg, as an example, you will see, look at how he communicates with people, and then come and look at mine, because we're very similar. Look at how when you tweet Bob or you tweet me, look at how we respond, and how, if you look at Bob's tweets, it's very warm. It's very warm. Bob has got a very warm personality, and people leave a conversation with Bob feeling great. And what you want is for people to leave you feeling great too. So go and have a look at how he does it. Track the conversations. I'm sorry, Bob. I'm just telling everyone to go and be nosy now. But you can learn a lot from just having a look at how Bob actually uses social media himself. There's another thing that Bob does, and I apologise here because this might actually make this a bit more prolific for you, but I suspect that you have Google Alerts set up. Would that be true?
Yes. I do it. I have Google Alerts set up so that if there's and obviously you know this, so that if somebody mentions, my name in an article or a blog post,
Yeah.
or if they mention any of my books like Endless Referrals or The Go Giver or Go Givers Sell More, I'll be notified, which allows me to connect and reach out with them if it's appropriate. And then also on Twitter, on TweetDeck, I also have a search set up.
And I do exactly the same. And we've actually got somebody on this call today, Nicola, who, when I sent her the email for the webinar, she says, "Oh, Bob, he's just so lovely. I wrote a blog about him years ago, and he actually came and commented to thank me." And, that is exactly it, isn't it? That was years ago. And that means that whenever your name comes up, that's not an immense amount of work to do that. It doesn't take that long to do. It's just about recognition, appreciation, making people feel valued. Nobody has to write about you. Nobody has to write to you. Nobody has to tweet you or comment on your own blog. But recognise and appreciate when they do. And, that's what Bob is very good at. I do it, perhaps not as to the same degree as Bob. I've got Google Alerts set up, so if my name comes up on a Google Alert, I will go and acknowledge the person who has posted something about me. And that makes, if you're the blog writer, like Nicola feels great. Nicola feels really appreciated and feels that connection with Bob because he took that time to do that. And, think about how you can make people feel good by giving to them, but without any expectation. Bob doesn't go and comment on a blog post with a, "Oh, buy my book." It's, "Thank you very much for this lovely blog," and that's it. That's all you need to do, without an expectation. Don't expect them to then turn around and buy from you. That's not how it works. It's just add the value, touch people, which leads to you building a network with you as a real person, and then stay open to what you will get in return, because you will get in return. If you're open to it, you will. But the absolute importance here is that you do not expect it. You don't do it just to receive. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about, Bob's very kindly endorsed me and the way that I use social media, and I help local business owners my business has been built pretty much entirely on social media. There's very few people on this call today who I didn't meet on social media first. I may have met you in real life afterwards. Bob, I don't know Bob in real life. The only person that I know that's met Bob in real life is my friend Suraj, who I only know from social media as well. And
he's a great guy.
Suraj is lovely, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. He was at our recent event in Florida.
Yeah, he came out a few weeks back, didn't he?
Yeah, he made such a great impression. Everybody there just loved him, and he was, during one of the question and answer sessions, he got up and he spoke. He actually gave some great information, and he was so nice to everybody, and everybody just absolutely thought the world of him.
Yeah, he's another one that's really got it. He's really absolutely a go-giver, and he's a great guy to connect with. He's a totally internet marketing expert, great guy to connect with. I'll introduce anyone who wants to meet him, but he is an absolutely ideal guy to be around, except when he shows off. When he shows off that he's with Bob. Look, I'm with Bob, and shows off that he's got this nice car for the 4 days or whatever that he's with you. But he's a lovely, lovely guy. And, I work with business owners to teach you how to use Twitter in exactly the same way that we've just discussed about giving, adding value, making people feel good, and in return you do get more results. And I'm not going to go hard on this because it's not. I'm not doing this webinar to make money. I'm doing this webinar because I want you. I've got an amazing opportunity to have Bob on the call, and I wanted to share that with you because there's so much that you can learn. But if you haven't yet had a look at my social media prospector training course, it's £47, and you will learn exactly how to. Like I said, I started my business and got to where I am now with all the opportunities and sales that I've made so far purely on the way that I use Twitter, and that is what I teach you in this program. And I've also got a 12-week program, which is the Social Media Mastermind Academy, which is it's all about supporting you in your journey to social media. So it's not about me training you on what I want to train you on. It's about training you on where you need to be on social media, with Go Giving at the very heart of what I'm teaching you. Now, the Prospector training is £47. If you were to buy the Prospector training at £47 before 5 o'clock tomorrow, I will personally buy you one of Bob's books. You tell me which one you want, and I will buy it for you, because I really do think that what you learn from Bob's books and what you learn in my training is an absolute, they complement each other beautifully. And it is, you will learn exactly how Go Giving works in life and business, and you will learn how Go Giving works on social media. And so if you were to join the Social Media Prospector, the Social Media Mastermind Academy before 5 o'clock tomorrow for £167, I would buy you all 3 of Bob's books. That me personally, I will order them off Amazon and have them sent to your home address. Now, you will get more details of these trainings in an email where I will send out the recording of this webinar. But if you don't want to go through any training with me, you can order all 3 of Bob's books on Amazon. They're available in paperback and Kindle. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if they're paperback or hardcover. I wonder if over in the UK, I wonder if maybe they did paperback, because we just have hardcover here in the States. So I don't know, but they are on Kindle, though.
I know that Go Giver's a little story, and if you've not read any of Bob's books before, I would recommend that you start with the Go Giver's A Little Story, the red book, because that is the foundation of everything. Go Giver's Sell More is built on the principles that you learn in the first book. But I know that Go Giver's A Little Story and Go Giver's Sell More are on Kindle, and I have a feeling, now you say that I did have a trouble getting Kindle for It's All About You. I think that is available in paperback at co.uk, but maybe not in Kindle at co.uk yet.
I'm going to look it up right now as we're talking, because I'm just really not sure. And so let me and I apologize that I don't know this. It's Not About You, and I'm looking to see. But go ahead, and I'll no, it says yeah, it is. It's not about. They must have just done it recently, but yes, It's Not About You. Also.
So if you didn't want to progress, you can go and buy them from Amazon, and they are absolutely brilliant. The first book you won't want to put down. You will read it as a story. It's not like a normal business book where you have to read a few pages at a time. You won't want to put this book down. And the second book is the same, but it builds on what you learn in the first book. Because I couldn't get it on Kindle. I haven't read the third book yet. Very ashamed and embarrassed to admit that. My excuse is that until I have my eye operations, I can't read printed books. So, but I will. Yours will be the first one that I get after the operations. I promise.
I'm just honored that you. Yeah, I'm very honored that you've given so many of the books away. That's a great honor for me. Thank you.
But I want to throw out now. We've got 10 minutes left with Bob, and I want to throw out now if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask Bob. I'm going to leave everybody muted just for the sound quality of the recording. But there's a question box in the control panel on the right. If you want to if you've got a question that you'd like Bob to answer. Bob, can you see that control panel?
Yes, I believe I can.
I'll read them out.
Yeah, there's a thing for chat, and there's a thing. Yeah, there is something for questions. So yes, feel free if anybody has a question to join right in.
Yeah, anyone got anything they want to pop in there? No, not yet. I've only got one question for Bob.
Well, that's okay. You know, one interesting thing also, you know, is it, that I think sometimes people have a question about sales itself and really what is selling. Because sometimes people have I think maybe a misconception about what selling is. And John David Mann and I wanted to address this, which we did early in Go Givers Sell More. And that is to understand what selling is and what it isn't. Because everybody who's everyone on this call, on this webinar, we're all salespeople. We all have an idea, a concept, and a product, a service. And when we look at selling correctly, we can feel very good about it and good about what we do. See, some people think that selling is trying to talk someone into buying something they don't want or need, and that's not what it is. Selling is just the opposite. Selling is finding out what someone does want or need and helping them to get it. Now, some people think selling is about taking advantage of others, but of course, it's just the opposite. Selling is about providing people more advantage through our products or services. But you know, Veronica, what we find the biggest misperception about selling of all is that selling is about taking, when in actuality, selling at its finest, at its utmost, at its most profitable, is all about giving. And I mean that actually literally, not figuratively. Selling is giving. Now, why do I say that? Because the old English root of the word sell is selan, which literally meant to give. So when you're selling, you're giving. Now, someone might say, okay, but isn't that kind of just semantics? Isn't that just a play on words? And I'm going to say, I don't believe so. Here's why. Think about it. When you are in the selling process, what are you giving? I suggest you're giving time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and most of all, value. So when you're selling, you are giving those things, and you should be very, very proud that that's what you're doing. You should be proud to say that you're in sales.
Thank you. Do you want to just tell everybody where else they can find you on the internet? Where can they find your blog so they can read more about what you're doing?
Sure. You know, anybody can visit if they'd like my website, which is just www.burg, and that's spelled BURG.com. And while they're there, there's a whole thing there for them to connect with me on Twitter and Facebook. They can search out my blog. I usually blog 2 or 3 times a week, and they can subscribe to that if they'd like. They can also, download some of my chapters from my books and so forth. So we invite people to come along and just have fun and connect with me there.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we're at the end of our session. I don't want to take you over the hour that we've booked. We've got 4 minutes left. So I just want to say an enormous thank you, Bob, for your time this afternoon, and for all of the enormous value that you've added to us this afternoon in this webinar, for sharing your knowledge, for being so generous with your knowledge, and for supporting the people in my community, and for being so good at social media, because you are a fantastic example of how to use social media, and I hope the people on this call can and will learn from what we've heard this afternoon, because it really, really is the best way to not only run your life, to run your business, but to run your social media marketing. So thank you everybody who's come along to the call this afternoon. The recording will go out as quickly as it takes me to process it, which will probably be a couple of hours. And thank you to Bob for coming along and joining us. Have a great Monday, because you're at the beginning of your day now and we're nearly at the end. So have a great Monday, and I'll catch up with you again on Twitter very soon. And thank you guys for being here, and look out for the email later on this afternoon with the recording if you want to listen back. Thank you everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Veronica. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, Bob.